A little bit unclear. Like, what is this really about? So I feel that by the end of our conversation today, you will have, everyone here, a new understanding of why anyone says what they say about the Holocaust today. So that's the goal. It's a large goal, right? It's something I'm saying that everyone will feel a little bit different. And I think there's many ways to jump into this topic. I have a source sheet. The source sheet, I'm going to hold off giving out for a couple minutes because I don't want you to read it. And it's not a regular source sheet. There's no, if you're used to Jewish text, there's no Jewish text in this. All this is me going to ChatGPT and me printing out, I think 16 times where someone I try to do politicians only, because we don't want to go down to every rabbit hole, only politicians, where they mention something about the Holocaust. And my goal is that we'll look at it, but at the end we'll try to understand what were they trying to accomplish based on what we discovered today. Okay, so my background is I'm from Florida, and I went to a Jewish day school. And as I reflect upon my personal experience with the Holocaust, I think that two things are specifically standing out for me that really highlight my relationship to the Holocaust. Number one is that we didn't talk about the Holocaust. Aside from my Jewish day school having one day for Holocaust memorial, I don't have any concrete memories of anything about that. I had around 50 relatives who died in the Holocaust. My mother was born in the 40s and my father in the late 30s, so they had very, very direct relatives who died. But they didn't hide it, it just wasn't something to talk about. And I'll tell you one reason is because when I went to Jewish day school, I got a sense there wasn't a focus on Holocaust because there was more focus on what can we do going forward. It wasn't about the Holocaust was something bad, but if anything, I look back, I feel that the Holocaust was one of the examples of all the bad things that happened to Jewish people, either expulsions or pogroms. And I think that as I became a chaplain on campus, I feel that was a very skewed perspective. Because when you see how other Jews, especially in the Reform and Conservative community, you can see that there is more of a focus on the Holocaust. And I came to realize that was a skewed experience. The second thing that I like to point out about the Holocaust is that for most people, it's not something that was talked about in general. And that meant for even people who have higher levels of exposure, it's very much a focus at certain moments. You have moments of Holocaust exposure. And I want to bring a couple Pew study numbers in to kind of flesh this out. So if I asked everyone, you could call out, what would be the top 5 things that are part of the Jewish experience independent of religiosity, denomination, just for people who identify as Jewish? What would you say, just popcorn out? What would be some things that are the top 5 things of the part of the Jewish experience?
Hebrew school.
Hebrew school, okay.
The holidays, so you don't use
Holidays, good.
Shabbos dinner.
Shabbos.
food.
Yeah, Israel. Food. Okay. So what's so interesting for me is that number one was an importance of Israel at 82% of, this was I think not the last one, I looked at the 2021 one. But around 82% of Jews identify in some way with the state of Israel, being an important part of their Jewish and or religious experience. But secondarily, the number 2 area was Holocaust identification. Shabbos is so low you can't imagine. The Jewish holidays will be Passover and Hanukkah, will float depending on the year, people in the 40s and 50s. But number 1, 80 Israel, number 2 in the 70s Holocaust. And I think for me, that was very, very surprising. And I think when we look at how people experience Judaism, this is one of the most important things that kind of colors my own understanding as when I interact with Jews and when I interact with, as a chaplain on campus yesterday.
This study was done.
I think this is the Pew from 2021.
Jewish people or the nation or the world?
So the Pew study is done by surveys by a whole all swath of American Jews. And they actually, I share a few of the details of how they collect the data and how it comes from. But again, they definitely take people who don't identify with any denomination. They take humanists, they take atheists, they take right wing.
They just identify.
Yeah, so they try to take a large swath, and again, like, I guess you need a statistician to figure out what quantifies to get these numbers to be accurate. I'm sure there's a plus or minus of 2%, but
Mark Twain.
what?
Mark Twain.
Yeah.
There's lies, damn lies, and sex.
Well, the Pew, I think, is generally the gold star in the Jewish world about how to kind of analyze data from people. So, Holocaust memorials, Holocaust identification. Why is this so important? I'm going to throw this back at everyone. I brought up my own past, but if I'd ask you today, number 2 on the list after Israel, why is it so important? Why is it more important than Passover? Why is it more important than Yom Kippur? Why is it more important than Shabbat? Why is it more important than Hebrew school? Why is it more important than life cycle events? I think for many of us in this room, especially because we're at a temple, a lot of those things do color our experience. So why do you think the Holocaust is number 2? And I'll even further the question. Israel and the Holocaust are the 2 things that we don't experience right now in this room.
Because
All the other ones we do, or we can.
I think it's because it emphasizes the persecution of the Jews through the ages, from the beginning.
So the Holocaust, you're saying, almost is like a metaphor for
For
endless persecution.
persecution.
It's a really bad one. Okay, and therefore,
For thousands of years.
and because of that, therefore what? Therefore, we have to reflect upon it, remember it. Like what? Therefore, what?
Right.
You
They're
want to
all-
prevent it. You want to prevent.
Oh,
it.
therefore, we have to reflect upon it so we can prevent it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'd be one. That would be like, yeah. Sorry, Steve.
I think that if Israel is number 1 on their mind, then people are under the impression, right or wrong, what it is, that the state of Israel was founded because of what happened after the Holocaust. The UN voted, that was the pity of the world. We'll give you your state of Israel, whether it would have taken place or not.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know why.
That.
I'll be honest. For me, the Holocaust is easier to understand than the 82% who say that they care about Israel. Like, I feel like the Holocaust. I think, like, we'll get some very concrete answers. I think when you talk about Israel, the phrase the Pew study says is that 82% of U.S. Jews say that caring about Israel is an important or essential part of being Jewish. And again, I think that it's such an ambiguous verb. I think this was from 2021, this one. So I think it's such an ambiguous verb that we have to try to kind of reflect upon what it means to care about Israel. So, and I would venture to say that for many people it means something very, very different. And putting aside even political bifurcations and divisions, I think even everyone's individual relationship, if you have relatives live there, and or you have people who fled to get there, and or you just like the startup nation, which was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of different reasons. Yeah. Yeah.
A number of years ago, my wife and I went on a tour of Eastern Europe, and we did go to Auschwitz and Birkenau. And while at Birkenau, and that's a very emotional experience, this one woman in our tour, not Jewish, said to my wife, "When are you people going to forget about this?" Now, is that the mindset predominantly amongst non-Jews?
Right. That's a very interesting position. So I actually lived in England for 3 years, and I decided to make a little bit of a tour. And my family, for just identification purposes, my mother has trained us this way, we boycott Poland. So while I've been invited on many March of Living trips, when I went to a Jewish day school where 125 people in my grade out of 140 went on March of Living. I went to Orlando and Disney, had a great time, but I did not go to Poland. And then even when I took my family on vacation, we kind of stopped once we got close to Italy. Like, we didn't go to the eastern part of Europe. And again, I don't know if I'm personally passionate about that point of identification, but I know it hurt my mother. Because she views Poland, whatever it is today, the historical relationship to what it was, as problematic. So I think that certain people definitely in Europe and us would think that it'd be better if certain things were forgotten. And I think that maybe this is part of our own historical memory about how do we deal with the aftermath of these consequences. So, okay, so we have 2 points. So I asked the question, why is the Holocaust either such number 2 so high, and or why is it so ingrained in our identity?
Could I ask you another
Oh,
question?
yeah, sure.
Why do you think that person was at Dachau,
Well,
whatever it was, and say one of you people can get it, why were they even there?
Because they were part of a land tour.
Okay, then I understand the
America.
framework was in which that
Yeah,
comment was
yeah.
made.
Okay.
All right, so they just, it was just included, it was just included.
Well, I mean, it's a good question. I feel like if you went to the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum
Right.
and someone questioned like, why don't you guys forget about this? That would be a very problematic statement.
Now I understand the
And-
context of what
right.
I was doing, okay.
Okay, so anyone else about why it's so high?
Well, just one other point,
Yeah.
my wife,
The ultimate of genocide, the ultimate of horrific crime.
You're right. So number one of genocide, very good.
my wife said to the woman, I will never forget about it, my daughter will never forget about it, my grandchildren will never forget about it, and on and on and on. And that, she was incensed by this woman's insensitivity, considering who we were.
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
I think that's one of the reasons why we don't forget about it. It's because you feel guilty, right? Like this little Jewish guilt. It's like, oh well, you have to go to religious school because of the Holocaust, right?
Right.
They're like, oh, you have to learn about this because everyone was murdered, and so you have to feel that.
So definitely the psychological impact of that event has led to a whole range of feelings that are definitely inherited and bequeathed from the early generations, and definitely that is one of them. And there's a whole range of feelings. I think that, and it really depends on kind of the relationship that you had with Holocaust survivors and the education you had. But I think that we all agree that, ranging from rage to fear to, as you said, yeah. Okay, anyone
I
else?
think Jesse Eisenberg did a good job in that movie that was out recently called The Real Pain, if anybody saw it. You can see it on Hulu now, but it was incredible. It was all about, these two brothers going back because their grandmother had left them money
Right.
to, I don't know if you saw it.
I'm aware of it, I didn't see it yet.
It was just a great movie. It tightens all.
It's interesting, I'm reading a book now about Pfizer, how they developed the COVID vaccine. The CEO of Pfizer is a Greek Jew, the son of Holocaust survivors. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's very interesting.
Yeah, that's amazing.
He said, who would think that a Greek Jew would be the head of the largest pharmaceutical company in the world? And, just a
But
point
he's
of
a Greek
interest.
Jew because his mother's left
Right, they
to
all,
escape to go to Greece, and the Nazis showed up in Greece and they almost killed her there.
right, the Greece has one of the highest, Buell Gorilla is one of the
He came
highest
from
percentage
Greece.
of death, right?
His-
So interesting. Okay, so I'll throw out one more stat before we go to the next point. So 45% of US adults know that 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. How does that resonate? Is that high, low, surprised? It's 45%. That's the number.
45% of Jews?
45% of US adults,
Okay.
US adults.
yeah, of the 350 million know that is. So does that sound, that's on one hand, sounds like 100 million people, sounds like a lot. Does that sound high, low? How does that resonate with this group?
Too low, too low.
I'm impressed that it's that high.
Press that to high.
I think right now, some of the surveys that are coming out are horrible, talking
Yes.
about, the denial is at the 40% level.
So I think we set up the stage that we understand that there's a reason we should talk about it. There's different opinions. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start that we're going to read the first three sources. The reason I thought of this topic originally is because of something that Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had a Twitter fight. And I think that it'd be good for us. I didn't limit the comments to earlier times because obviously some of the Holocaust references will refer to the Gaza war right now. But I tried to take something from 2019 to start because I thought that would be more innocuous for this group. I feel that we are still as sensitive as possible to the COVID repercussions, and as we even see today. So this was a debate. So what I'm going to do is we're going to read the first three sources. I'll just read it, and then we're going to talk about how do we feel about the two perspectives. So I'll go. Number one, on June 17th, 2019, in an Instagram live video, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, "The United States is running concentration camps on our southern border, and that is exactly what they are. They are concentration camps." She later tweeted, "This administration has established concentration camps on the southern border of the United States for immigrants, where they are being brutalized with dehumanizing conditions and dying. This is not hyperbole, it is the conclusion of expert analysis." So before we read the next source, the question I want to ask this group is, how do we feel about AOC using the phrase concentration camps to describe what America and what either our military or namely our government is doing to other groups?
There's two connotations for concentration camp, because what is, as a Jew, I think after the Holocaust right away, but when you use the word concentration camp, I think it was used also the Japanese, American Japanese.
We gave it a different name, we called it internment
Internment camps.
But you heard a lot of times when I was talking about
Yeah.
that was the concentration.
So Steve, I think that's such a great point, and I think you're noting, what does it mean to own a word? Right? I think that a lot of times we see on social media that certain words are owned. If I say me too, then I also want a turkey sandwich. That would be, I think, a little bit uncomfortable in our society because the me too phrase in certain contexts, I think, has changed its meaning and its impact. And I think if we all think around this room, there's a lot of words. The word that we're gonna see, I'll just bring it up now, never again. I never again want to eat that turkey sandwich. I think that not only in this room, but in many places throughout America, that would be viewed as either insensitive, falling on deaf ears, or weird. And I think that the question that you're noting is that concentration camps can mean a lot of things. I could even make a new word for concentration, like a place where I concentrate a lot. You know, that wouldn't be completely off. But does it, because that phrase was used for Holocaust nomenclature, does that mean that it automatically is owned by that group? So let's see what Rabbi Abraham Cooper, yeah, there, come on. So Rabbi Abraham, in source number 2, Rabbi Abraham Cooper, a very nice man, of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, in response to AOC's comparing the detention centers to concentration camps, he said, it's an insult to the victims of the Shoah, to the Holocaust, to make blatant false comparisons. Stop casting Trump as a latter-day Nazi, scheming to build concentration camps. So before we go on, could tell me, what is his point? What is Rabbi Cooper's point that he's trying to make here? What is he unhappy with?
He owns the word that the Holocaust belongs to the concentration camp.
Would he be
It's a death camp.
right? Would he be okay in any situation? Would there be a situation for Rabbi Cooper where he'd be okay with using the word concentration camp?
Outside of the Holocaust? No.
Outside the Holocaust. So if we had an exact situation of a concentration camp today, somewhere in the world, would he say you just can't use it, even if it's the exact same criteria? Would he say, no, it's a historical term? Or would he say, that's a good comparison? Is he noting the problem in the comparison and that he feels that's not apt? Or is he noting the problem in the nomenclature that you could never use that historical term?
Well, he's saying blatant false comparisons. He's not saying never use the term.
So it does feel that way
That's
to
how
me
I
as
read
well.
it.
So,
I don't know.
and it's interesting because I think in any conversation, whenever you throw out the word Nazi, that's usually the most that's the end of the
Yeah.
conversation.
Mhm.
That's the
Yeah.
most extreme. So it's interesting that he's the one who introduced. He didn't actually cast it as an aspersion, but he cast it as an ideological aspersion. Right? He's like, you can't go about doing that. That's not the way to go. And I think this is the same question. Is it when he raises and ups the ante, Rabbi Cooper, he says you're casting it as a latter-day Nazi, is that a problem because we can't compare anything to Nazis? Or is it a problem because, I don't know his political background, is it a problem because either he's a Republican or right of a Democrat? Okay, so let's see, it's very exciting. In the Twitter world, we could get back and forth, and I was very excited. She responded, and I think is very much resonating with what Steve said. Source number 3, Representative Ocasio-Cortez said, and for the shrieking Republicans who don't know the difference, concentration camps are not the same as death camps. Concentration camps are considered by experts as the mass detention of civilians without trial, and that's exactly what the administration is doing. What's her response?
The mass detention and then murder. She forgot the word murder.
So
She's defining the word.
Torture.
she's defining concentration camps as not being owned by Holocaust nomenclature. She's also saying that there is another word that is more apt. All of you experts or people who already have nomenclature, she's saying I have a better, more apt word, and maybe we should transition to that word. Because this word is almost like a general principle. There's many examples of, yeah.
She points out that to some degree we're using the wrong word.
Right, exactly.
We often say concentration camps, and maybe what we should all along been saying are death camps. That's in fact what they were.
How are they not done?
I think the thing is that what Rabbi Paul's saying is that there's a general term called concentration camps, and I think that we would all agree that, what she is saying then, that we'd all agree that many things would fall into concentration camps. And I think she's also saying that there's a separate category called death camps, and maybe many things would also fall under death camps, but I'll tell you what happened in the Holocaust definitely falls under both, and most importantly, you do not own that phrase.
Right.
I'll even argue that AOC would say that you don't own the phrase death camps either, which I'd say we all probably agree to.
But she's also saying in item 1 that they're being brutalized, dehumanized, and dying. So that to me is
Well, the good news is, if anything,
a Nazi concentration camp.
it's
If what she's saying is true, you know,
well, I think that
it's a conclusion of expert analysis, she's saying.
the basic, I think, if anything, she's both giving us a bone and taking one back. Right? She's giving the idea that that was horrible and much worse than average. However, what is taking place here has enough overlap with concentration camps from a definitional perspective that it's apt to use that phrase.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, anyway, okay. So we'll do one more source, just because I was, again, like these are kind of random, but I was excited to see Governor Tim Walz, because like, I'll be honest, when this original debate took place in 2019, I definitely wouldn't have heard of him, but he became more nationally known, so it's exciting to see that. So next quote, see this is much more recent. Donald Trump's modern day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets. They're in unmarked vans, wearing masks, being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons, no chance to mount a defense, not even a chance to kiss a loved one goodbye. Just grabbed up by masked agents, shoved into vans, and disappeared. So what I want to just point out is that he uses, again, a very specific term, and he actually, again, lightens it a little, because he actually says a modern day Gestapo. So whenever you say modern day, something that means that I understand that maybe I don't understand this nomenclature. I don't own this nomenclature, but it's still apt by saying that there is a comparison, if not identical. But this still opens the door. Is it appropriate? Is he undermining the impact, the importance of the Holocaust by saying that anything is comparable?
Absolutely.
Because what we heard is that one of the first things we said was that one of the reasons that the Holocaust is remembered today, because it was the worst. It was the most bad. And it was the most bad, by definition, it can't have comparison. You know, if you think of any other definition, like it's like, you know, if you think of even like a theological definition of God, if you think of like an omnipresent or an omniscient being, if someone else is also omniscient, that would take away from that idea of that being the most, the best, the paradigm, the paragon. So what
Or
happens?
even trying to understand it.
Right.
So, right? Because where are people learning about the Holocaust? They're you know, they're not really, right?
So before we go back to the Holocaust specifically, to try to frame some more of the quotes that we'll go through, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Good idea, bad idea to use Holocaust nomenclature to show just how dire a situation is. I think if you drop the word Gestapo from source number 4, from Governor Tim Walz's
it would have been
address,
okay, maybe.
No, but I'm saying it was still very strong.
Right.
He used that word in order to strengthen. He feels like it almost has a multiplier effect. And I think that's how, just because that's how all of us probably experience it as well. We may not feel comfortable, but there's no doubt there's this multiplier effect. So how do we feel? Should you use Holocaust nomenclature terms? I'm sure we could think of, I can make a list of more.
Absolutely
Say,
not.
You're acting like Hitler. That would be another kind of phrase. You're acting Nazi-like.
Ghetto.
Never again. Ghetto.
So MAGA is just another way of spelling Nazi.
That's what they
That's
want.
what's happening.
And you know, if anything, you know, I'll just tell you something like this didn't go well, and everyone's going to disagree with this. So I think we're all aware that the swastika had earlier, more innocuous, if anything, beneficial meaning. So I pitched to Deborah Lipstadt that we should do there is a campaign on Emory's campus that's take back the word, to not use the R word. I feel like I can't say it anymore. To not use the R word because it's not an acceptable word to use in our society anymore. So I thought it'd be a great campaign to model that, to say let's take back the swastika. and everyone thought this was the worst idea in the world. I literally had no buy-in. And for me, it's such a, when you see a swastika, I feel like almost a pain. I feel like almost PTSD. I feel such tension, anxiety, and I feel that symbol was stolen from the Buddhist community, and it was redefined. And if I use the swastika just as the beginning of any design, it's unacceptable today. And I think that I thought maybe that the idea is to kind of transition it back, to give it back to the Buddhist community. But the point is that it also would go on the list of ghetto, Nazi, Hitler, the swastika. If you use the swastika in any other sense, it's really not used in those ways. So what do we think? Should the Holocaust and I'll say it bluntly, and Jews own these words? Or is it appropriate for Representative Ocasio-Cortez, Governor Walz to use these phrases to show just how drastic these situations are? To show, like, really to bring their own honesty and truth to the situation. What do you think? I got some head nods.
Well, it's not a Holocaust. What she say, it's not. You can't compare it to what the Nazis did.
They again, I would say they both
I mean, this is a
tempered
very
their statements.
strong statement.
Yes.
Number one.
And-
But to compare it to genocide, well, over 6 million, more than 6 million. We always say 6 million, but I understand it was more than 6 million Jews.
But we know, for example, there were genocides that took place. There were wars that took place that I would call genocide that had 10 and 20 million people. And I feel if they use the word Holocaust, it'd probably be problematic. Okay, so what I want to do now is just the next step is frame 3 perspectives. Okay, so the first one is I wanted to kind of talk about what does it mean to have this debate and how is it being waged, not in the non-Jewish world. I want to try to understand how the Holocaust nomenclature conversation is being waged in the Jewish world. Because I think that's really, it's kind of impacted us the most. And if any area where we would maybe have the right to define terms, I think that this would be the case. So the first perspective of the Holocaust is exactly what you said. Number one primary legacy of the Holocaust is that Jews need self-preservation. Jews cannot trust non-Jews to protect them. The number one lesson of the Holocaust is that we need to have our own state, we need to have our own army, and I don't know if you saw it this week, Prime Minister Netanyahu recognized that the economy of Israel is going to have some tremendous negative consequences over the next 100 years based on what's happened over the last 2 years. And therefore he said maybe we need to have our own independent economy. And anyone who understands what it means to have complete autonomy, it means that you can't have these other groups being able to hold over you a situation where you can't protect yourself. So the lesson for the Holocaust is, for the first group, we're going to give 3 positions. The first group, self-preservation, through autonomy, through having our own state, through having our own army, and therefore, Israel is the culmination of the Holocaust. Well, I understand that Zionism started, I would say, thousands of years ago, but at least in the late 1800s, you already have political movements in order to go towards the establishment of Israel in 1948. However, because of the Holocaust, you needed to have a state of Israel at the end, and the culmination of Zionism is specifically to have a state where we're not ruled over by Goyim. We don't have non-Jews telling us what to do. And therefore, this would impact, I'm sure we all recognize that one of the reasons that Israel can't absorb, for example, the West Bank and Gaza is because they're worried about votes. It's just they don't want to have a country where they could lose a majority. For them, their definition of Zionism, for this group of people who would define the Holocaust this way, would be that we need to have majority because we can't lose that majority because then we can't have control of our state. So that would be the first group. You don't have to raise your hand. I just want you to reflect if you fall into this definition. The Holocaust was so bad, I remember it, and therefore Jews need self-preservation, need autonomy, need their own army, need their own state, and therefore I need to support, if anything, Israel and or other action steps first. The second primary legacy of the Holocaust for the Jewish community is that we have to be cautious as how we exert power over minorities. When you look at what the Nazis did, how they rose to power, not only what they did to Jews, but what they did to all minority groups, what they did is carry out a policy that made it that minorities can't function. And the Holocaust was the culmination of the eradication, not of Jews, but of minorities. Jews got it the worst, granted, But the meaning of the Holocaust for these groups is that I need to remember the Holocaust. Why? Because when I look around the world today, I see dozens of minority groups that are ill-treated. And that is completely unfair and inexcusable. And you know why it's inexcusable? Because my people went through the Holocaust. We know what it's like to be the minority that's hated, and if we don't stand up for minorities today, then we learn nothing from the Holocaust. So before we go on, let's reflect upon that. Let's understand how those first two positions, A, have a little overlap. The Jews are the minority, but the first position is very Judeo-centric. You're worried about the Jews. And will minorities be impacted and go through genocides? Yeah, and we wish them well. But the Holocaust has nothing to do with them. According to the second position, where we're really focused on weaker groups, on minorities, and how the Jews were just an example of that, the Holocaust really has very little to do with Judaism from a memorial perspective. The impact of the Holocaust is a good to remember it, because the Jews have to teach the world about how to be better, how to care about minorities.
I think both can be true, though.
We will see. There's definitely truth to everything we're saying, but we're going to show how it plays out by people's verbiage.
Yeah.
Okay, third position, which is a little bit of a overlap between the first two. The lesson of the Holocaust is that you cannot have genocide ever. Genocide is definitely picking on Jews sometimes. Genocide is definitely picking on minority. But it's a third category that you could have a genocide about a non-minority. You could have a genocide by, there's actually been, in the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of conversation about what the definition of genocide is, more so because we learned that certain experts are not experts and there's a lot of ups and downs. But the main lesson for the Holocaust is that I have to fight genocide. So for example, we'll use our Gaza example, independent about how you feel about Gaza being a genocide or not. If you do feel it is a genocide, the lesson of the Holocaust is that you have to do everything you can to fight the Israeli government's policies in Gaza. So we see that while the first two can overlap, in this third case, it could be opposites, because the first definition of Holocaust would say that, listen, a certain group of Gazans invaded on October 7th. If we have to wipe out every single one of them, that would be justified according to our first meaning of the Holocaust. According to our third, you can literally have to do everything you can to protect them. And this is where it plays out as opposites. That anything a Jew can do in this situation, if you think it's a genocide, to fight the Israeli government, to stand up against that genocide, then that would be justified. So we see that your definitions of the Holocaust play out not only in the 40s and 50s, but today. And this is how, we will have conversations about it. So for example, when, I want to read through a couple more examples, but when our first example of Rabbi Abraham Cooper, what's his perspective on the Holocaust? What would you say? Where does he fall in? Is he a 1, 2, 3, and we allow mixes?
I think he's a 1.
He definitely has shades of 1 at a very minimal. I would say that because I know him, I know he also has 2. And I'd say he cares about 3, but I'd say 1 trumps 3 across the board for him. And for AOC, because while I'm only having a conversation with this group about how it is reflected in the Jewish community, and I do think we should define how it means in the non-Jewish community, anyone's allowed to say whatever they want, and therefore, how would the Holocaust be remembered according to AOC? Is she a 1, 2, or 3 person?
She's a 3, but I don't even think that's a great, description, because.
So the answer is, she's definitely not a 1 person.
Yeah.
Right? And again, I would even say to you that she might be interested in 1. She definitely has statements, but that is not the meaning of the Holocaust. So let's do a couple of these. I tried to get a swath from ChatGPT. Our next one is our favorite Republican. Number 5, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. I've actually never said her name out loud. Okay. Okay. She compared COVID-19 safety requirements to a time in history where people were told to wear a gold star. I guess this maybe is another, Gold Star has not been completely owned by the Jewish community, because the kindergarten community is also doing well with the Gold Star as well. She said they were put in trains and taken to gas chambers in Nazi Germany. This is exactly, she doesn't temper it. This is exactly, as opposed to Tim Waltz, who said that it was modern day. It's exactly the type of abuse the Nancy that Nancy Pelosi's talking about. So she actually apologized for this one, fun fact. So I just want to, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on Rosh Hashanah season, Shuva. She apologized, and she made sure to do other things that could be problematic. But I think that was a great example. So now we're going to do a more modern, we'll go to number 6, a more modern person, Francesca Albanese, and E is pronounced at the end. So she's the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Situation on Human Rights in the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967. If you follow Hillel Neuer on social media, this is his antichrist, this woman. So
This is what was
he hates this woman. He feels that she's an anti-Semite, and she feels, as we're going to see, she's doing her best. Let's read. So she wrote, "Never again. We, the generation who grew up with a sense of deceit, guilt, and responsibility for the ignorant and cowardly ancestors of ours who made the Holocaust happen, we have a role to play." So on the one hand, do any of us disagree with that? I think this is a powerful statement. However, what happens is she specifically gets into the crosshairs of the one community. And the one community where she feels, the one community, as we know, has had a history, especially in the UN, of being decried as racist when the one resolution was passed and then went away. But the one community, a lot of times, the way that our ubiquitous and universal world has evolved, it's a little more complicated to care more specifically about your either minority, tendentious group. It invites criticism from the world. So I think that, again, she is a non-Jew, but she would definitely fall very squarely into the anti-one group.
What she's saying clearly, using these words.
Right, never again.
Is that she's saying this is exactly equivalent to the Holocaust taking place right now in Gaza.
And
She's
she
claiming that it's the equivalent.
And she also says, I love how she brought in the history. She says, it's not that I have to learn about this in a textbook. It's not that I should have feelings about this because I should care about every social justice situation. What she's saying is that I don't know, she's probably like 55. We who grew up in that generation, we already understood what took place. We have an intimate knowledge of this situation. And therefore, our experience is what brings on that personal, social, and moral responsibility. So she actually, if anything, is saying that because of who we are and where we live, I'm not talking abstractly about,
Even more, she owns it. She calls her ancestors cowardly.
Right, 100%. Yeah, but 100%, that's a great point. So I think this is rare, where she's saying that our responsibility is driven by our immediate past. Again, one of our conversations we had to start is that one of the reasons that the Holocaust, that Jews identify with it, aside from it being so bad, aside from the psychological damage, is that it was immediately in our last generation. I've met many Holocaust survivors. My mother knew tons of people who either died in the Holocaust or had relatives died. So the immediacy of it lends itself to us having a higher moral responsibility because we experienced it.
But she doesn't give specific examples of how it's the same thing.
Oh, there's only so the only word the reason I chose this, because the reason ChatGPT chose this is because she used the word never again. Yeah. Okay. She also added October 24th. Yeah.
The Holocaust survivors you work with at JFS, do they talk, are these conversations that they have,
That's a great question, and I'd say I'll tell you my experience, but our Holocaust director, Debbie Rosenswein, would have infinitely more experience. But I've done 2 eulogies for funerals, Holocaust persons I got here. And what I found is when I interviewed the families, is that one family said that she never spoke about it, and the other one said he only spoke about some of his family's experiences. So what I still see that the people who want to make sure, like in the Steven Spielberg kind of sense, that it's known, that they kind of go against their better interests and overcome their psychological impediments in order to share, but it's so unnatural, and I feel that most people, even to this day, don't share, and it's hard to share. That's been my experience. Does anyone else want to share what they've experienced?
I think that, from, having worked at JFS all these years, I think that perhaps our survivors will speak with their therapists or mental aides more, but for the most part, in terms of the programming, they only want to have fun and never want to talk about Holocaust.
So they hear this.
Just our group.
But
this is not triggering. This is
Yeah.
is this a triggering statement
Right.
from
Right.
the UN?
So they don't
So
respond to any of this.
100% that I think if this is triggering for the Jewish community, or at least like, again, identifiable, I would just say it's exponentially more complicated for that community. But again, just because things are complicated doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. It just means that, we have to reflect upon the context. So let's skip to a Jew. Let's go to, I see number 10 or 11 are Jews. 10, 11, 12. Oh wait, 10 and on are Jews. Okay, let's go to 10. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, when speaking on the topic of the Charlottesville white supremacist rally, as the grandson of an exterminated Holocaust victim, I know the dangers of white supremacy. So first I want to ask you, what group does he fall into? 1, 2, or 3?
I agree.
So which group would this be the most worried about? White supremacists generally are attacking which groups?
Well, it'd be 2.
It'd be specifically 2. It's the minority groups that I worry about. And again, he's not being exclusionary. I don't think that he would, he's not going to be anti-Zionist in the sense of against the existence of the state of Israel. But I think that the messages that he could have said is that I am against white supremacy because of American values, because of moral correctness. He specifically brought in his Holocaust familial experience because he thought that colored the framework, that I not only have a better understanding of what it means to persecute minorities because my family went through it, but we also have an obligation to speak out about that because of what my family went in, and that is because of one of the enduring messages of the Holocaust for the Jewish community is you have to fight against radicalism, you have to defend minority rights. Okay, Bernie Sanders, should say representative, about that, sorry. My family's entire family was wiped out by Hitler and his supporters. We must never forget the lessons of the Holocaust. So I really like this one.
That is unbelievable.
Well, again, like this is a one-liner, so like we're not like I'm sure there'll be a so when I looked at the context of this is that when he was running for office, he was just speaking about his family, and I thought that this is the most general. I love this statement because if anything, it allows us to be a 1, 2, or 3 Jew and or non-Jew. So if anything, that there is a whole movement that there's nothing to learn from the Holocaust, and we can't deny that movement exists. So I think Bernie Sanders is allowing for that ambiguity to play out in your own personal identity.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I personally did like this statement, because if I tell you I'm a 1 Jew, a lot of times, that again, I think the 1 and 3 groups do contradict sometimes. So he's saying that, as a politician also, that maybe the enduring memory of the Holocaust is that you have to have an enduring memory of the Holocaust, which I think that, and that allows for that ambiguity to play out. Okay, Amira Haas, if you ever read Haaretz, she's...
The neo-Nazi movement agrees with his statement. And they actually say
that is a...
Right, so that we'll
It works
support,
the other way.
neo-Nazis will support Bernie Sanders based on that statement. We shouldn't forget it, we should do better. We exceeded with 6, and let's keep going, let's learn the lessons and
Right,
continue.
and to conclude, I'll push off 5 for 5 minutes. I'm going to show you where an example of those 2 movements overlap. So let's do 2 more.
And Israel now, in the UN, is being accused of genocide.
100%. And
Yeah.
if you're a group 3, that would make sense. Okay, so let's do Amira Haas. Gaza is a ghetto in the classical sense of the word. People are crowded together, walled in, deprived of basic rights in a way reminiscent of Jewish ghettos in Europe. So again, she makes sure to not soften it by saying classical sense. So I think it's actually interesting. The actual prepositions, aside from the vocabulary, is what tells you the person's identity. Modern day softens, classical sense strengthens. And what we see is that we have situations where Amira Haas would identify of what's, say, one of the lessons of the Holocaust would be that we have to stand up for Gazans' rights. So let's do Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, number 13. This is a battle between the children of light and the children of darkness, between humanity and the law of the jungle. This is a war of our existence. This is a war. This war is like the war against the Nazis. It's very easy to know what kind of person. What number is Prime Minister Netanyahu? He's
1.
solely a 1. And I think this plays out his policies. So we'll skip the rest of the sources, but what I wanted to point out is that when you hear any politicians or anyone speak of any Holocaust nomenclature, what I want you to do is reflect upon why are they saying it, where does it come from, and how does it play out? Because I think that if you think about Benjamin Netanyahu as a person who is, if you ask him, are you anti-genocide? He's like, of course I'm anti-genocide. But that has nothing to do with how he's acting in Gaza in his head. And therefore, I think that when you understand these 3 definitions, to review, number 1, Israel exists in order to save the Jews. make sure that we're safe, that we can't be ruled over by non-Jews, that is really easy to understand why people, how they're understanding their relationship to Israel, their relationship to the Holocaust, and in Arabia, their relationship to America. Our second definition, where you have to specifically worry about minority rights, and that's the enduring legacy of the Holocaust, that's specifically for another group of Jews, and I think it plays out a lot of times in the political sphere. Because number one would not be politically correct to really play out in America, though if you follow politicians in Israel, this is, I think, one of the number one ways to understand the different political groups in Israel. And our third definition, the people who are railing against genocide, that's being claimed to take place in Gaza, this will be their perspective. So I want to finish in our last couple minutes with two additional perspectives. Who here has been to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C.? Okay, everyone. Who here has been to Yad Vashem?
What's that? What was the question?
Holocaust Museum in D.C. versus Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Israel.
Oh.
So most of us have been there. So I'd love to just quickly, what are they? 1, 2, or 3s? What do you guys say? I'll ask you, maybe I'll frame the question again. So those of you who've been to Yad Vashem, you know you enter through a bridge, you go in a zigzag pattern, and then when you walk, you go through the Hall of Memories, that room with that's so big, that tells you, oh my God, I can't believe how many people died, and while also focused on individuals, amazing message. But that's not the last thing you see when you go to Yad Vashem. What's the last thing you see?
Judean Hills.
Judean Hills. What's the message of Yad Vashem? You know what the end of the Holocaust is? You know what the success of the Jewish people after the Holocaust? These amazing Judean hills that are green and beautiful, and while you've been in a dark, unlit museum with uneven borders, uneven walking, silence and weirdness, you exit with what? Beauty. Because you know what beauty is? Jewish self-determination in their own land. That's Yad Vashem's message. Now let's go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. Is it identical? I mean, they don't have Judean Hills at the end, I know that. But what is different? So I'd say the first half is very similar. Very much a focus on the history, a focus on what the Jewish people went through. But what's the conclusion of the Washington Museum? What is its focus? So I got some of its mission statement information for you. And I thought I'd just share with you, just for example, that we have that while Yad Vashem is specifically focused on the connection to Jewish national identity, the Holocaust Museum in DC is meant to be a living memorial in the nation's capital, and it carries a dual identity, national memorial, and it's an education institute. What are they educating about? So if you've been there, you know they're railing against genocide. Genocide, unfortunately, where the world might have thought after World War II, genocide will not take place anymore. Genocide is absolutely still a problem in the world today. And therefore, the Holocaust Museum is meant to say the Jews are an example of a genocide. And if we want to fight genocide throughout the world, learn the Jewish story, because the enduring legacy of the Holocaust is that you have to fight against genocide. That might be minorities, and that one of that minorities was the Jewish people. But the message of the Holocaust is not that you need a state of Israel, not that you can't be run by non-Jews. If anything, America's message is opposite, right? America's message is that we put this in our capital to know that the Jewish story is an example of the melting pot of America. This is our story. And our story is that we will protect Jews, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, atheists, whoever. We'll protect every group, because that's America's mission. Okay. Yeah, question.
Why do you think Mr. Trump is so tied in with Mr. Netanyahu then? It almost seems like they're making Israel our 51st state.
Politics, I don't know.
This is the Bible that I wrote into it as a modern truth. And I also don't know how these other museums affect. I've been to the Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Study, and I give them money.
Right. So I don't know the answer, but I'll tell you that when I'm not sure this is answering anything you're saying, but when I was in Atlanta, Joe Biden came to spoke at one of the conservative synagogues, and it was like they brought in a very famous speaker every year. And that year it was probably 2015, and everyone Joe Biden, and I was excited. I've never heard Joe Biden in person, and I saw that when they were saying Hatikva, he knew the words. And so I can't tell you about how much Trump and or Biden and or left or right try to make Israel be a 21st state, but I say that the people who support the state
And
of
that's
Israel,
what
and the people who, there's many people who have differing levels of Zionism. And I think that it plays out differently for all different groups, so.
Now, I went to college in New York City, in
Yes.
Columbia. I have a hard time putting all that together at this stage of my life.
And it's complicated. And one of the challenges is that over the next generation, it seems as if America is going to become more complicated around the state of Israel and not less complicated.
By the way, Joe Biden did sign the initial bill to get the JFNA started, like that.
Yeah, Joe
was the
Biden
first
identified.
time that we got those funds.
Yeah, he identified as Zionist. So
Time.
I'm saying, like, I try not to play favorites with political parties. I'm just saying that there are people on both sides that seem to identify as Zionists.
Here I am at the final stages of my given life, and I'm still confused over things that I sort of learned when I was 6 or 7 years old, and I've never been able to sort them out, including among people of my age who have been one or two here. When I remember being like 6 or 7 years old, there would be a family gathering of the elders, and when all of us cousins started to come into the room, you would hear, shh, shh, quiet, the children. They didn't want to talk about it, and I never was, and then later on, it was only when I became really an adult that I began to
Well, this-
understand. They wouldn't even
Well, this is
talk about
complicated
it.
also, like what you tell your children. I can tell you the U.S.
And I
Museum
still hear it.
in DC does that also. They recommend anyone under 11 years old take cautions. And if you look at the way they shift different sites, that certain kids who are below a certain height can't see certain things. So this is a challenge. What should be PG-13, R, X. Everything in America is very complicated about how much you should expose your children.
Very much so.
My daughter was in Israel this summer, and she heard for the first time the sirens, and I was very interested to hear how that impacted her. But the one thing that I know for sure is that a person who hears sirens in their life or experiences missiles either hitting them or flying over their head, independent of your religion or identity, has a different life, and you experiencing things differently, and you reflect upon things differently.
These kids don't do airway wardens like we did in
So my
elementary school in 1950.
right. So except for the ones who
We went
live
to
in
the
Israel,
basement
right?
and all went in the hall. That stuff. These are things that are built into me, and
Right.
I'm coming here hoping to somehow sort it out even a little better.
Well, it's a complicated word to sort out, but yes, it's definitely something that is
They don't
a continual
understand
challenge.
that, but why are we in the basement? Yeah.
But we don't get a lot of information either. I mean, I watch this one channel, I-24 News, I don't know who else does, but the Prime Minister of Israel, when the Syrian Druze had their own October 7th day a couple of months ago, he tried to stop it. He bombed them. And Putin called up and everybody's freaking out, and the ISIS leader running Syria right now is having a meeting
Right, so
in
there's no-
Egypt about it.
It's
or Qatar.
complicated, right? That's
But that wasn't about, because Druze live in Israel. They're not Jewish, they're not Israeli, but he's the only one who tried to help them. So, I'm not trying to get crazy here, I'm just trying to say, we don't have all the information about everything that he does. And the people were trying to help people in Gaza. Israel was okay, it's for Jewish people, but there's a lot of non-Jewish people living there. And people in Gaza were getting help by Jews living in
Right. So
Israel.
even the number one group will not they don't try to in general. I can't say for every single one. They don't try to extricate the non-Jews from Israeli society. They just feel that they play a role, and that role might be either racist or it might be, as an equal citizen. Depends. So I think that was a good example, though, in Israel, where when that took place, that the world doesn't trust Netanyahu. So when he bombed I did see the news when he bombed that, they don't trust his motives. Okay, well,
Trust him or resent that he can do something like that.
Yeah.
And get them to stop their behavior. Because if you walk up to a criminal and get him to drop his gun, they're not happy with you either.
Okay. Well, any questions?
Sorry.
Otherwise, we'll call it a day.
I just wanted
Go
to
ahead.
make a comment about this gentleman's comment. I tend to be very, very cynical about my interpretation, and what you bring up leads me to think that what Trump really wants is Gaza to be Trump Tower.
Tend to think that we're cousins.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure, Connor.
Very interesting.